and chewy on some hot nigga. Like I told Tish, I see when I shot niggas. Like you see.
In 1710, Thomas Newcomen invented the first practical steam engine for pumping water, the Newcomen steam engine. In those days, flooding in coal and tin mines was a major problem, and Newcomen was soon engaged in trying to improve ways to pump out water from such mines.
James Watt was born on January 19, 1736 in Scotland. While working as a mathematical instrument maker for the University of Glasgow, Watt was approached with the Newcomen engine in 1764. Upon examination, Watt determined that the Newcomen steam engine was severely inefficient. The Newcomen engine used heating and cooling technology, which wasted a large amount of energy heating the steel inside of the engine. In 1769, Watt patented his new and improved engine design that consisted of a separate condensing chamber that prevented steam loss. It used differences of pressure on one side of the piston, created by a vacuum, to push steam down the piston.
The cotton gin was created by Eli Whitney. Its sole purpose was to separate the seeds from cotton at a quicker rate than by hand. It was patented in 1794. This helped increase the amount of cotton that was being produced, which made cotton America's leading export by the 19th century. He didn't make much money off it though, because there were issues with the patent. It also helped plantation owners expand their slavery, even though more and more people supported abolition. Samuel Morse wasn't the inventor of the first telegraph, but he did take credit for it. He invented Morse code in 1836, which used pulses of a current to deflect an electromagnet, which moved a marker to make a series of codes on a piece of paper. Then you would decode that to get the message. Claude Chappe invented the first telegram in 1794. It is now an outdated way of communication though, because we have phones.
Elish Otis changed architecture forever with his creativity and ingenuity. Elevators had already been invented, but Otis essentially created the elevator industry. With the elevator safety brake, Otis and his sons began experimenting, and in 1852, they developed the elevator safety brake. When a cable snaps on the platform, the brake provides an emergency stop option. Elish Otis' invention made large buildings and skyscrapers a reality, changing the landscape of architectural design forever. Otis went on to start Otis Elevator Company, and his elevator design became known as the Otis Passenger Elevator. The first Otis elevator was installed in New York, 1857.
In 1854, following a discussion about a new military projectile, English inventor Henry Bessemer began work on creating a more reliable metal for French leader Napoleon III. It had been questioned whether the conventional cast iron cannons would be able to withstand the force necessary to propel it. So, despite having little knowledge of the steelmaking process, Bessemer set to work and by 1856 invented the blast furnace. The furnace provided an extra burst of oxygen to molten cast iron, increasing the temperature to burn off carbon and other impurities. This resulted in a more reliable steelmaking process and better quality steel. Bessemer's method would pave the way for the mass production of steel and would help to spur the Second Industrial Revolution in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
Alfred Noble was an engineer who built bridges and buildings. His work led him to find an easy way to get rid of rocks in order to proceed with construction. This led him to experiment with nitroglycerin. In 1863, Alfred Noble invented the blasting cap for detonating nitroglycerin. Rather than using heat combustion to ignite the explosives, he used a strong shock from the blasting cap. In 1867, he received a U.S. patent number for his invention. Later, he improved his blasting cap by adding a fuse so it could be easily ignited.
Smallpox had become epidemic in England in the 17th century. It was especially feared among the aristocracy, who feared its disfiguring effects. Until the late 1700s, it had been prevented by inoculation, a process which involved collecting pus from the sores of infected persons and then inserting a needlepoint amount of that pus into a scratch or open sore of a healthy person. Of course, this method proved problematic, sometimes causing severe symptoms, death, and even the spread of the epidemic. Upon hearing rumors of milkmaids immune to smallpox due to exposure to cowpox, a British country doctor, Edward Jenner, collected observations over a period of 18 years. In May of 1796, Jenner tested his findings by infecting a boy with cowpox and a month later infecting the same boy with smallpox. The boy never contracted smallpox, thus establishing the first vaccination process. Vaccination effectively lowered the rate of smallpox infection in the following centuries, making smallpox the first disease to be conquered by science.
The telegraph and telephone are both wire-based electrical systems, and Alexander Graham Bell's success with the telephone came as a direct result of his attempts to improve the telegraph. His understanding of music enabled him to come up with the possibility of transmitting multiple messages over the same wire at the same time. Bell was working to create a harmonic telegraph until one of his peers, who was an electrician, Thomas Watson, brought to light the thought that maybe you could transmit speech electrically. Watson and Bell proved that different tones would vary the strength of an electric current in a wire. They built a working transmitter with a membrane that was able to vary electronic currents in a receiver that would reproduce the variations in audible frequencies. One day, while Bell was working on the harmonic telegraph, he discovered he could hear the sound of a ticking clock over the wire. This marks the invention of the telephone in 1876.
Would you think if I sang out a tune, would you stand up and walk out on me?